Good day. It's September 15, 2025. The City of Las Vegas has already published a list of 40 applicants to fill in the remainder of City Council Ward 2. I'm Maribel Villanueva. Welcome to The Pulse. One of the 40 applicants will serve the remainder of the term if appointed by the mayor of Councilwoman Victoria Seaman, who served since 2019 and recently resigned to join the Trump administration on the Colorado branch of Health and Human Services. One would be appointed counsel for Ward 2, who will serve until either July or December of 2026, depending on who wins in the July 9 primary election, which would also be a special election for that seat. As the Trump administration augments deportation numbers, the government of South Korea has already chartered a plane to repatriate Korean staff back to their home country after a controversial raid at the Hyundai factory at Ellabelle, Georgia, by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, not too far from the city of Savannah. About 300 Korean nationals were among 475 people who were detained 2 weeks ago near a construction site where the Korean companies Hyundai and LG are building a power plant. A spokesperson for Korean Air told NBC News that a chartered plane would leave for Atlanta. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung said that he felt a sense of responsibility for the safety of Korean nationals. The government of Japan also indicated that 3 Japanese nationals were also among those detained. Sarah Park, the head of the Korean American Coalition, said that the Hyundai and LG joint plant needed visas for highly specialized contractors and technicians, and that business and government leaders understood that the visas were not granted at the required scale. On the troubles of the Republican Party, more Republicans are leaving the party to become independent, and others are becoming Democrats. Republican Oregon Assemblyman Cyrus Havadi flipped to become a Democrat after he said, "The party is heading for more on burning things down and becoming more opportunistic, especially isolating minority communities when it is convenient." He said he registered as a Republican when he was drawn into the idea of fiscal responsibility and limited government. He told Newsweek that he knows on average that Republicans want good things, but that the party is moving away from constitutional conservatism. Havadi's party switch increases the Democratic supermajority in the Oregon House to 37 out of 60 seats, weakening Republican influence in the state. In a case filed against President Trump that is treated as a clash between the powers of the executive branch and a co-equal branch, the legislative branch of the government has a ruling from the panel of 3 judges on the Court of Appeals D.C. Circuit and a little-known firing by the Trump administration of an official called the Register of Copyrights, Shira Perlmutter. Such position is under the Office of the Senate Confirmed Librarian of Congress. The ruling from the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals says that the Librarian of Congress is Senate-confirmed and not an appointee of the executive branch. Therefore, Shira Perlmutter could only be fired by the Librarian of Congress and not the President. Let's take a commercial break. When we come back, we will give you the world news. Please stay tuned.
We use headphones as a part of our everyday lives. Whether we're at work, getting exercise, meditating, in transit, studying, practicing, or relaxing.
Hi, I'm Ryan Sway, the founder of Aircom. I would like to introduce the world's first wireless airflow audio earbuds. As a festival and a concert junkie, I really enjoy the live experience of being there and feeling the music. When we started developing Airflow, our goal was to reproduce that live experience using earbuds.
The problem with traditional headphones is that The speakers are located inside of the earpiece, literally giving you centimeters before the audio hits your eardrum.
What Aircom is doing, they're the first company to actually address the fact that there needs to be a space involved associated with having the sound waves expand fully.
The difference between traditional headphones and Aircom audio is that the air tube gives you 8 times more space, allowing the sound waves to fully develop before they actually hit your eardrums. And this gives it a much more live, natural sound, just like in a recording studio.
It's real nice that someone actually addressed the physics associated with how sound comes out.
The challenge we had was to create an earbud with enough airspace for the sound to fully develop and breathe. Unfortunately, traditional earbuds are about the size of a jelly bean, and there's just not enough airspace. However, that changed when we developed Airflow Audio. Airflow uses an air tube to deliver 6 to 8 times more airspace than traditional earbuds. The end result is a true live listening experience, just like you're at a festival or a concert. We also added magnets to the back of the earpieces so you can wear it around your neck when you're not using it.
Being that the drivers are 8 inches from the earpiece, the magnets do not affect the integrity of the sound at all.
The orange line represents the frequency transmitting through the wire to the speaker, which then converts to the blue sound wave that develops more as it travels up the air tube, producing a balanced, full body and live listening experience.
Another really cool feature is that these earbuds are sweat-proof and water-resistant because they're coated with a super hydrophobic nanotechnology. So now you can be on a skateboard or riding a motorcycle and listen to music as if you were watching a live show or actually in a recording studio.
We're coming to you for help in bringing these unparalleled earbuds to market.
Welcome back to The Pulse. Al Jazeera reports that a police officer in Indonesia was fired for a death that sparked protests. A motorcycle delivery driver was killed by an armored vehicle in which the officer was one of the 7 passengers, sparking widespread outcry. In an effort to put an end to the current anti-governmental rallies, Indonesian authorities have dismissed a police officer who was involved in the death of a delivery driver who was struck by an armored police vehicle. Officer Cosmas K. Gay behaved unprofessionally during the protest, according to National Police spokeswoman Tranayudo Wisnu Andiko, who called his actions a reprehensible act on Wednesday. This honorable dismissal as a member of the National Police was the sanction, according to Tranayudo's remarks to reporters, which were televised by Compass TV. The front seat of the car did not contain Cosmas, one of 7 arrested officers who had been involved in the incident. According to Reuters news agency, he was spotted sobbing during the trial and stated that he had no intention of killing anyone. While the fate of the other 6 police is still unknown, the sanctioned officer stated that he was thinking about filing an appeal. Meanwhile, President Prabowo Subianto eliminated a controversial $3,000 housing allowance and other benefits for members of the parliament on Monday. Since last week, demonstrations against economic injustice, legislative benefits, and police brutality have broken out nationwide, spearheaded by workers, students, and rights organizations. The protests have resulted in some looting and rioting, and security forces have responded with tear gas and rubber bullets, killing at least 10 people. As of Monday, at least 20 persons remained unaccounted for, according to the Commissions for the Disappeared and Victims of Violence. President Subianto said the army and police would not tolerate violence during the protests. At least 10 student union leaders met with legislative representatives demanding that protesters who were arrested be released, saying they disagree with the president's claim that some of the disturbances during the demonstrations were veering toward treason and terrorism. Students at the University of Indonesia demanded an impartial inquiry into police brutality and contrasted the wealth of lawmakers with the financial struggles of others. It seems like they exploit us during every election. However, we were forgotten when they won, stated Agus Saitawan, head of the student body. Students will have the opportunity to directly communicate their requests to the administration, according to Sufmi Dasko Ahmad, a senior member of Prabowo's party and the Deputy Speaker of Parliament. Let's take a commercial break. When we come back, I will be joined by Sierra Hernandez, who is the new chair of the Young Democrats of Nevada. Please stick around.
Don't waste your money on CBD. Now hold on, don't turn the video off. If you're already taking CBD, good for you, you're on a good path, but there is a much better way. If you're thinking, should I try CBD? Let me answer a couple of questions that might help you make the decision to even try a CBD product. First of all, let's answer the question, what is CBD and where does it come from? CBD is cannabidiol. It's called a cannabinoid, and it's found naturally in many different plants. In fact, as you see here in the Cannabicae family, there's hops, sandalwood, hackberry, of course, hemp, even marijuana, but we're not talking here about marijuana. In fact, we're going to be talking about hemp. As I started to mention, CBD can be found in hemp, in rather high levels, as a matter of fact. But here's the problem. CBD is not the only cannabinoid you can find in hemp. Hemp contains over 100 different cannabinoids. In fact, in the Cannabicae family, hemp contains the highest level of cannabinoids of any plant, which is why it's the most popular source for CBD. But as I mentioned, CBD is only one of the cannabinoids that you can find in hemp. Hemp contains high levels also of CBC, CBG, and CBN. So why would we want CBC, CBD, CBG, and CBN? Well, as we look at the benefits here from CBD alone, you can see these benefits are great. I mean, who wouldn't want these benefits, right? But let's look at the benefits you can get from CBC. You see, they compound with CBD and offer yet even more. But then let's also now look at CBG. CBG has even more benefits. So naturally, anybody looking for the maximum benefit you can derive from hemp would want CBC, CBG, and CBD. But don't stop there. CBN also has fantastic benefits. So if you're looking for a great hemp product and you're contemplating trying a CBD product, don't just buy CBD, and please don't buy that cheap gas station grocery store stuff. It's just that, cheap, and it won't benefit you at all. But if you can get a high grade, medical grade in fact, hemp product that contains CBC, CBD, CBG, and CBN, now you are unleashing the full power of your body that can only happen if you have all four of these cannabinoids in your body. If you're taking CBD, you're getting roughly 1/4 of the benefit that hemp can give you. Well, 1/4 is better than nothing, I suppose, but when you want 100% of all the benefits that hemp can give you, that is what happens if you take CBD with CBC, CBG, and CBN. So now you're probably asking, well, where on earth do I get all four of those? The problem now is solved. CBX4 contains high levels, not trace levels, and this is very important, contains high levels of all four of these cannabinoids, which means every benefit we listed up until now is available to you naturally in CBX4 and only in CBX4.
Welcome back to The Pulse. With me now is Sierra Hernandez, who is the new chair of the Young Democrats of Nevada. Sierra, welcome and belated congratulations on being the new elected chairperson.
Thank you, thank you. It's an honor to be here, and we always look forward to opportunities to be able to connect with viewers of different backgrounds who might resonate with what we have to share.
Esmeralda Padilla Gold previously interviewed your predecessor, Maria Nieto Arta, back in August of 2023. What can you share with our viewers again about the Young Democrats of Nevada?
Yes, well, first and foremost, we're thankful for leaders like Maria and those who came before her, as we've gotten the fortune of inheriting a very strong organization. But when it comes to who we are and what we do, it can be boiled down to educating, empowering, and engaging young people across the state of Nevada. We have active chapters and caucuses that represent high schoolers, that represent college students, that represent our young Black, Brown, and Asian voters. And now more than ever, at a time when there's a lot of mistrust and distrust within our governmental institutions because of our federal leaders like those in office currently in the White House, our job now more than ever is around those specific things that I mentioned at the start: empowering, engaging, and educating young people to give them the tools necessary to be empowered to do good in their community, to engage them so they feel some form of connection with community and the leaders around them. And more than anything, by being able to stick to those core values, we've been able to see a lot of tremendous success. So far, we have a membership of 700 Young Democrats across the state of Nevada, and that continues to grow with every event that we have and every action we take. So a lot of good work that we've done up until this point, but still a lot more work that needs to be done.
That's wonderful. So you mentioned the members that you have, but we're curious if you could estimate how many young people who are registered Democrats here in Nevada.
Yes, so using the information provided to me from the later end of 2024, we see anyone who is under the age of 35 as young. In Nevada, those voters, anyone under 35, not even talking about Democrats or Republicans just yet, but anyone under 35 is, I believe, 500,000 voters, or if not a little more. So pretty significant block.
That's pretty big, yeah.
Of those voters, I believe it was roughly 27% of those were Democrats. So I believe that translates to around 148, give or take. 17% were Republicans, and then the rest were largely nonpartisan. So although 27% of that 500,000 is registered as Democrat, those nonpartisans, we believe a huge chunk of them, although they might be registered nonpartisan either intentionally or unintentionally as a result of the state's automatic voter registration process, we truly believe that a large chunk of those unaffiliated voters largely and inherently have a lot of core democratic values. Some may not necessarily subscribe to a political label, but we know that with the right messaging, the right investment, and the right engagement, that we can not just win them over in the work that we do electorally, but more specifically, the work that we do in community.
Oh, that's a lot to do. So what is the turnout in 2024 for the Young Democrats?
When looking at the previous election cycle, specifically for Young Democrats, I believe, and feel free, I'm more than happy to double check, but the amount of Young Democrats that turned out in the 2024 election cycle, I believe hovered around 100,000. So a pretty significant block of all Young Democrats within the state of Nevada who turned out. Still a lot of work to do to make sure that we're reaching out to the folks who didn't vote for the purposes of making sure that their voices are heard and reflected, not just by electing our governmental leaders, but also properly reflected within the policies that we make.
That's wonderful to hear. What is the stance of Young Democrats in the issues with the Trump administration's hostile policies towards education, immigration, rolling back policies of DEI, healthcare, LGBTQ, and women's rights?
For some additional context, while the Young Democrats of Nevada as an organization doesn't necessarily get involved or in policy or crafting policy per se, we are all impacted by the policies, especially from the Trump administration. Before diving into the specifics, to give you just 2 examples of how the Trump administration has impacted young people in the state of Nevada. Young people returning to our college campuses this semester at the CSN North Las Vegas campus were met with the fact that the CSN TRIO office, a dedicated program helping low-income Black and brown students, students with disabilities, students who are first generation, who are helping young people who are oftentimes facing massive amounts of barriers towards higher education. This program closed its office doors. And as a result, that leaves a lot of students, hundreds, that would have benefited from this program, not just this semester, but semesters well beyond this year, are now left with less resources to be able to continue their educational journey. And that is one example in Southern Nevada. In Northern Nevada, the only LGBTQ+ center in Northern Nevada had a grant pulled from it as a result of the Trump administration withdrawing federal funding. And the specific grant that they were going to receive but didn't end up receiving was to help with suicide prevention among young LGBTQ+ youth. I don't think the programs that I mentioned, I don't think are controversial by any means necessary. And I think more than anything, we're going towards helping the people who needed it most. I think most people can agree every now and then we need hand ups. And that's what those programs would have been to address very critical and very important issues within our community. But those programs and resources are no longer being offered as a result of the action of the current administration.
That's devastating.
And when it comes to where we stand on the number of stances and policies that the Trump administration is trying to push, it's fairly easy to say that we stand in opposition to not just his efforts, but any efforts that would harm working class people and young people in the state of Nevada. And we recently saw them push forward another bill at the federal government, their big, beautiful bill, which kicks people off of Medicaid, makes it harder for students as it pertains to being able to obtain other financial aid resources when it comes to higher education. It makes it harder for working class people who need a hand up, who rely on things like SNAP benefits, who are now going to be kicked off. And those impacts then impact our state budget, which is already being constrained by the fact that, as you well know, as you might have seen on the news, we are seeing less tourism month per month. And the less tourism dollars that we have, the less money we have to be able to spend on critical programs across the state. And our Nevadans, both young, old, and in between, are feeling the impacts of the Trump administration. And above all else, we are continuing to educate our community around those impacts, stand in firm opposition of those pieces of legislation that harm our working class people, and going to continue keeping an eye out for anything else that might be damning to people who need the most help.
I'm sorry to hear all of that. This next question, what vital role will Young Dems of Nevada play in the upcoming 2026 midterm election, especially reaching out to young voters who are undecided?
For starters, one thing that we're actively doing, especially in what they refer to as the off year, the year before the election, and really before primaries get started and before we get into the general election, we're actively meeting our community where they're at. So we kicked off our new term. We're 2.5 months into our new term, and we started it by hosting a small business canvas around sharing Know Your Rights information provided by, and information we were able to get from the ACLU of Nevada. We went to business in the East Las Vegas Community Center, reminding people that about their civil rights, about the protections they have as not just immigrants, but business owners and members of our community. And that's how we first started our new term. by being intentional with the events that we're hosting. And that's how I see our term, not just now, but in the future, being sure that whatever it is that we do host always keeps in mind our community. But even as we enter the general election, one thing for certain, in addition to meeting our community where they're at, we're making intentional and purposeful investments in key communities that make up the coalition of young Democratic voters. So that includes our young Black voters, our young Brown voters, our young AAPI voters, and so on and so forth. And we believe that ultimately we'll be able to make even more significant gains among young people by being able to meet them where they're at, making investments in them, but not just investments in them, but investments early on, and continuing to find ways to empower them so that well after I'm gone, you have another strong leader who comes in to continue uplifting and empowering the next generation of leaders.
That's amazing. Before we go, any last words from you?
I think I'll just address the audience.
Yes, please.
Above all else, at such a very interesting time in our country, with moments of such distrust and a lot of mistrust taking place, the biggest thing I can encourage anyone, besides supporting, or in addition to supporting the young Democrats in Nevada and the young people around your life, more specifically taking some form of action. The biggest thing that you can do now as a viewer, as someone at home, is find community, build and empower those around you, and continuing to have your voice heard through advocacy, through elections, and so on and so forth. The biggest way to show that hope is still alive is by being in community and empowering said community.
That was Sierra Hernandez of the Young Democrats of Nevada, the state chapter of the Young Democrats of America. Sierra, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.